He didn't want to do general father-son roleplay in the abstract, he wanted me to roleplay as his actual son. AskReddit on Reddit Rundown. Prostitutes. What is the weirdest request you've gotten from a customer? I was a male, gay prostitute, I suppose when I was in my late teens and early 20s, though I don't know that I thought of it in exactly those terms. Weirdest thing that ever happened with a middle-aged, run-of-the-mill seeming guy, who'd been referred to me by a mutual friend. He took me out to eat and then we went back to his place. It was a standard upper-middle-class dwelling, pictures on the walls of him, his wife, a son about my age and a younger daughter. As it turns out, the wife was at her mother's with their daughter and the son had just left for college a few months ago. That was not the weird part, him having a family, that was common. We start making out and I'm spacing out the whole time when he stops to warn me that he's into something kind of weird. I'm jaded at this point and think I'm really worldly, so it's like, whatever, everyone is into something weird. Then he says he's into father-son roleplay. Well, alright, that's a tiny bit weird, but not uncommon. It's definitely not going to send me running to the door like he seemed to think it was. So, I say that'll be fine. He says great and we go upstairs. Not upstairs to his bedroom, but rather to his son's bedroom. And then he gives me his son's baseball uniform to wear. And then I remember the photo downstairs, and realize that I looked a bit more like his son than might be purely coincidence. He didn't want to do general father-son roleplay in the abstract, he wanted me to roleplay as his actual son. I told him I needed to think about it, went outside to smoke a cigarette, came back and gave him a price that I thought would practically force him to say no. He didn't skip a beat and agreed to the price. Fuck. So, we have sex, and I'm in pieces of his son's baseball uniform, and the whole time we're fucking he's calling me by his son's name, and he just beguiled me with how he'd pretty much wanted to fuck me throughout basically every milestone of his son's life. I wanted to fuck you at Christmas, I wanted to fuck you at the Grand Canyon, and on and on. I wanted so badly to be anywhere but that situation, I'm pretty sure my soul nearly left my body. We finished up, he paid me, suddenly far more subdued and ashamed looking, and I left. Feeling different. I was a driver for an escort agency. I asked one of the girls her freakiest moment. She was paid double the hourly rate to arrive at a penthouse suite while wearing stilettos. She was asked to strip naked apart from the stilettos. At which point he put a plastic sheet on the floor and tipped out a whole box of 100 garden snails. He sat fully clothed, and watched her fulfill his request. To one by one squish the snails and say "bad snail, out of mummy's garden." My friend is an escort, and it is not a request but a group of people. There are lonely old rich ladies that want a young handsome man to make them feel special. No sex. He works in the LA area, so he gives them the time of their lives in LA. He takes them to the best tourist spots, little known local areas, lunch and sometimes dinner. He takes care of any medical or handicap needs, buys them small gifts. He has regular old ladies that book him for the week they go to LA. Not a prostitute, but one of my professors represented a prostitute in an unrelated case to this story. He brought it up to illustrate the difficulties in defining sexual contact. The guy would rent a hotel room and put tape on the lock so she could enter. He always was tied spread eagle to the bed with a basket of oranges at the base of the bed. He paid her to lob oranges onto his genitals. That's all. No touching, and the way she threw the oranges had to be very specific. Not overhand, and not just dropping them from above. It had to be a gentle lob from a few feet away. Not a prostitute, but more so helped my friend be an escort. She's 5'1" and meek. I'm 6'2" and a big guy. So, I'd bring her places. I'd stay just outside the door. The guys usually understood. Well, the weirdest that I had was one time I was waiting outside a room and heard her scream for me. I practically broke the door, part of it cracked, and ran in. To find this dude standing there naked, beaming. Apparently, he was a submissive bi man. He liked my friend slapping him around a bit but wanted to see just how strong and tough that man is. Having to see a naked 65-year-old man pleasure himself to me almost break his door. My friend still owes me for that. My partner has a few. There's one guy that books several girls and just covers them head to toe in lube. He then proceeds to just slide all over them for an hour butt naked. The mattress apparently needs airing out afterwards for a couple of days because the lube just soaks through everything. I've had a guy ask to be tied to a pole and flogged, and complained when I stopped after making him bleed. I'd accidentally hit a raised mole and it bled a little. We slapped a band-aid and some antibacterial goo on it, and ended the scene. Had some coffee together to wind down and he kept whining that it was fine, he liked it. Cool bro, but I didn't like it. Even though it was an accident and probably didn't hurt much, but I have a strict no blood policy. We discussed this before starting. There's also the guy who wanted me to fart on him. As noisy as possible, I rejected that request because being bloated and gassy for a whole day didn't appeal to me. People in general are weird. When I was sugaring, a man who spent half his time in the US and half in China contacted me. Everything was normal the first little bit, but then he started in on the rules. I could only wear skirts in his presence, wedges or plain colored flats, day to 2-day-old panties, bras a size too small. I also couldn't wear scented lotion, perfume, makeup, or eat any fragrant fruit. I could not use chapstick or lip gloss, and I couldn't paint my nails unless he was at the salon to pick out the color. This was all incredibly weird, but I figured I'd give it a 2-date shot, making sure to stay in public. I was supposed to be in a wedding the day after our date, so I stupidly scheduled my wedding nail appointment the morning before. He saw my nails and immediately started tearing up. I was so confused, kept apologizing. I wanted my $600 for the date, so I had to be nice. He told me we had to go to the car. I protested. He said I could sit in the driver's seat if it made me feel safe, so I agreed. We get in the car and he unzips his pants to show a raging boner. I said no, I'm not doing this. He cut me off and said I didn't have to do anything other than show him my French nails and I'll get my money. I sat sideways in the seat, put my hands on my bare feet in the center console so he could see them all. He started furiously masturbating. He said he was coming, cupped his dick in his hands to catch the cum, and then licked it all off. I was so freaking confused. He sighed, handed me my date money, and told me to have a good day. I thankfully never heard from him again. I was a dominatrix, not a prostitute, but I had a guy who was really into teeth. As in, he wanted me to touch his teeth and talk about his dental history, talk about my dental history. It's not crazy out there, but I didn't know until that day that this was a fetish someone could have. I once asked a stripper what her weirdest request was. She told me that she had a regular customer that she would visit after the end of her shift. He loved to smell her shoes. He wanted them to be ripe from her walking around all day. After he smelled her shoes, she would piss in a cup and she would pour the piss through her used shoes and he would drink it. So, I was on top of my boyfriend at the time, and I was going at it like it was my last night on earth or something. Smacked my head hard on the slanted ceiling above the bed. Completely knocked myself out and my nose bled everywhere. Spent the rest of the night in A&E being treated for a bad concussion. Also, don't get me started on the guy I just used to see for casual. He was incredible in bed, we were both having an awesome time, next minute he jumps about a mile, which felt amazing for me, and starts giggling really high-pitched, not so good. My reaction was, what's so fucking funny? Turns out my dog had got on the bed without us knowing, being pretty distracted at the time, and was merrily licking this guy's balls. Pretty awkward. Poor dog. Not a hooker, this was a weird Craigslist ad from Florida reposted to a humor group for laughs/horrified disgust. Some guy said his wife passed away a couple years ago and she was cremated. He was offering to pay a woman willing to insert a small amount of his dead wife's ashes into her vagina, and have sex with him. Price not specified. Weird, but I figured the best thing to do was try to make it weirder with my response. Me, I'd be down. Make her spirit angry. Her final rest interrupted by literally being inserted into a situation where her husband is fucking another woman. Then her spirit becomes restless and can't find peace, and voila! I'll be the first woman ever to queef a ghost. And queef ghost will forgive me. I'll tell her he was a douche and she was the only memorable thing about his dick. Then we'll be best pals, me and Queef Ghost. Not necessarily a weird request, but an out of the ordinary client. One of my favorite clients is an almost 80-year-old ex-priest. We've never had sex, his dick doesn't work anymore, but we spend a few hours together every 2 weeks for dinner and company. He said back in the day, he had a lot of amazing sex with escorts. These days, he still hires us for old time's sake, minus the sex. Thanks for listening to Reddit Rundown. Give a thumbs up and subscribe, and help me get to 1,000 subs. Leave a comment below on what kind of topics or stories you would like to hear. You can also check out other videos on my channel. Thanks and have an awesome day.